Racism has been reflected in discriminatory laws, practices, and actions, including violence, at various times in the history of the United States against racial and ethnic groups. In today's video, we will tell you about the top 10 most racist states in America. Number 10. Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a haven for many racist groups. The hate groups range from local chapters of the Ku Klux Klan and a violent skinhead group of anti-LGBT and anti-Muslim organizations, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center, an organization that tracks hate groups. There are pockets of hate groups throughout the state. This includes urban areas like Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, and rural places like Potter County in north-central Pennsylvania, where one of the country's largest neo-Nazi groups has a regional headquarters. The Anti-Defamation League's latest white supremacist propaganda report showed that Pennsylvania had the highest number of white supremacist incidences in the country. The 2021 report showed 475 incidences across the state, nearly double from the previous year. The report recorded a historically high national total of 4,851 cases of racist and anti-Semitism messages distributed by white supremacist groups. These groups distribute hate propaganda to accelerate recruitment and spread fear. Number 9. Nebraska. It is important for all Nebraskans, but especially for those of us who were raised away from cities amid more homogeneous cultures, and perhaps unaware of our history, to come to grips with this reality. From our beginning as a territory, slaves were brought here by their masters, despite our designation as free. In particular, Stephen F. Nuckolls, a co-founder of Nebraska City, brought 2 slaves with him, who eventually fled to Chicago to seek freedom. While segregation is often viewed as a product of the South, history shows that Nebraskans participated as well, from the Buffalo Soldiers of Fort Robinson, who were regularly harassed, to the ammunition depot workers in Hastings, who were forced to live apart from most of the city. The history of racial injustice is not something of the past. It is not something that is exclusive to the cities or to the South. It is with us right here, right now. BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and other people of color. This term has been described as an effort to center Black and Indigenous voices in conversations of racial justice. It has also been criticized as overly general. It is used in this guide whenever an umbrella term is needed for Nebraskans of color, who all deal with racism in different ways in the state. Number 8. Michigan. Michigan communities are raised to address health challenges. It is made possible with funding from the Michigan Health Endowment Fund. Racism has demonstrable negative effects on the health and wellness of people of color. African Americans have the highest death rate and shortest survival for most cancers. About twice as many Black adults develop diabetes as white adults. Black mothers are 4.5 times more likely to die during pregnancy and the postpartum year. And in perhaps the most heart-wrenching statistic of all, in Michigan, more than 3 times as many Black babies died before their first birthday as white babies. Racism is deep and pervasive in so many systems, whether it's education, housing, transportation, or environment. Number 7. District of Columbia. D.C. statehood would accomplish 2 long-term goals of activists in the Capitol: full representation in Congress and a D.C. government that is completely independent from congressional rule. But why are the district's more than 700,000 residents denied these basic elements of democracy in the first place? The reason is rooted in the United States' long history of anti-Black racism and fear of Black political power. As Congress debates the district's fate, it's valuable to revisit the history of the Capitol's taxation without representation, which exposes this odious reality. Number 6. Wisconsin. In the 20th century, people from around the world came to Wisconsin and the Midwest, seeking opportunity in the industrial boom. Manufacturing and unions helped create good jobs for many Black workers, but discrimination and segregation limited that sharply. When industrial jobs declined, Black Midwesterners suffered the most. Over the past 40 years, opportunity and outcomes for Black residents in Wisconsin have fallen below national averages. As a result, Black Wisconsinites face stubborn barriers and roadblocks that many white people don't even know are there. Racial disparity in Wisconsin is not inevitable, but closing the gap will require a broad force, a multifaceted approach. Wisconsin has the regrettable distinction of ranking among the worst states in the nation for racial inequality. Disparities among Black and white residents of our state, spanning poverty, unemployment, educational attainment, and incarceration, have been documented consistently for more than a decade. Although activists and policymakers have increasingly focused on addressing these issues, they remain pressing. Number 5, Iowa. In a place where people love to tout high marks on state-by-state rankings, this one might have slipped by you with everything else going on. Iowa still comes in near the top of the shameful list of the nation's most racist drug enforcement states. Black Iowans are more than 7 times more likely than white Iowans to be arrested for marijuana possession, the 5th worst disparity in the nation, according to a report released this month by the American Civil Liberties Union based on 2018 data. Black people in Iowa 7 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession, ACLU study says. Number 4, Minnesota. It found that Black people in Minnesota are 10 times more likely to end up in jail or prison than white people. It also found that median income for a Black household is $30,306, but a white household is more than double that number at $66,979. Race relations experts feel those two statistics are directly connected. In metrics across the board, household income, unemployment rates, poverty rates, and education attainment, the gap between white people and people of color is significantly larger in Minnesota than it is most everywhere else. Minnesota is home to some of the nation's worst race-based disparities in employment and home ownership, and it is where George Floyd was murdered at the hands of police, sparking a national reckoning. Could that be because discrimination is worse in Minnesota? According to one recent survey, the answer is, quite possibly, yes. While Minnesota is a highly educated and relatively left-leaning state, the APM Research Lab's recent Minnesota's Diverse Communities Survey suggests that some forms of discrimination may be even more prevalent in the Star of the North than in the U.S. as a whole. Number 3, South Dakota. In South Dakota at that time, it wasn't unusual to see restaurant and shop signs reading, "No Indians allowed." Today the signs have come down, but VOA has heard from dozens of Native Americans in South Dakota who say that racism permeates their lives and is especially prevalent in the state's second largest city, Rapid City. South Dakota has a history of tumultuous race relations, dating back to early white settlement, according to a 2019 report by the South Dakota Advisory Committee to the U.S. Civil Rights Commission. Number 2, Illinois. In Vienna, Illinois, no one talks openly about the violence that drove out Black residents 66 years ago, or about how it became a sundown town. The town is still grappling with racial tensions today. These are overwhelmingly white communities that, for decades, stayed that way on purpose. The term derives from the signs that some towns posted at their corporate limits with warnings saying as N-word, "Don't let the sun go down on you." Number 1, Louisiana. Louisiana's racism isn't confined to history. It's also present today. Louisiana has a racist past, and it has made progress over the past 302 years. Does that mean we have erased racism? Considering the following stats, for every 100,000 white people in Louisiana, 675 are incarcerated. For every 100,000 Hispanic people in Louisiana, 1,114 are incarcerated. And for every 100,000 Black people in Louisiana, 2,749 are incarcerated. 36.5% of Black students and 36.5% of Latino students have no access to home internet, compared to 28% of white students. During the 2018-19 school year, 37,893 black students were given out-of-school suspensions. What are your thoughts about these states and their racist nature? Please subscribe to Travel the World. Thanks for watching.